We ready?
Yes, go ahead, Steve.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. And I'm Steve Wolfson, and today I'm going to be speaking about becoming more comfortable with feeling challenged. And since I picked that title some time ago, I have definitely been feeling more challenged. And this is what I want to speak about as I've been observing what is going on. Locally, what's happened is Tuesday, September 8th, a small grass fire started about 2 miles from my house. It was on a day when the wind was blowing 40 to 50 mile an hour gusts from the east. In Oregon, the wind doesn't blow from the east, but it was blowing from the east at a really rapid clip, and within an hour, fortunately, it was blowing away from where I live and from the town, for the most part, from the town I live in. But it was pointing directly at two towns that are farther north from here. And within an hour, the first town on the way north began to be on fire. And by 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night, both towns looked like a war zone. We were watching live video stream that a TV station set up, and it was images I will never forget. As it's turned out, the combined population of these two towns is about 11,000, and the latest reports on how many units or housing was burned, not just burnt down, put it that way, was almost 2,400 houses. Figure out how many people typically live in a house, say two. That's like 4,800 people don't have a house out of a total population of 11,000, almost half the people. People still don't know. Some people, well, everybody knows whether their house is burned or not now, but they're not allowed back yet in over a week because there's no electricity, water, etc. And all this happened. That Tuesday morning, I was sitting here minding my own business, doing my normal start of day routine. And the next thing you know, life kind of turned upside down. People, of course, are in varying states of shock. And the emotional states, even for myself, of realizing there's no one here that doesn't know at least a number of people who just lost their house last week. Nobody at all that's lived here for more than a month doesn't know somebody or more that has lost their house. So that's a very deep and thought-provoking situation to find oneself in. And so I'm in my own version of adjusting and integrating to this. I put it this way: before this happened, we were all concerned, pros and cons about COVID-19, and is it this and is it that, and da 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 da. And for the last week, there's not even been space to think about COVID-19 very much at all. And this is, very local, it's profound. So now I want to step back, and talk about this from a deeper perspective, or the type of approaches that I've been talking about for a while here in these talks. And I talked some time ago about, or I've several times, I think, at least alluding to how everything is here to help us. And so when you have all this fire, of course, the first place many of us go to is, how the hell is this helping us? And it requires going deeper, and it's definitely not. So this is really important because what I'm speaking about is not airy fairy pie in the sky woo woo, but dealing with our actual reality, which is emotions that are all over the place, um, shadow parts. You know, I have a lot of anger at present about different things. I don't like that, but it's coming up. And, I'm realizing it's actually part of the gift because it's getting in touch in a very grounded way with parts that are not among one's favorite parts. Um, the gist of this is I heard someone speak about it a while ago, and it really affected me and gave me a slightly different take on the topic. And it was talking about how being challenged is actually part of life and it's intentional. I very much come from a soul perspective. I have learned over a long time, or I've experienced over a long time. There's a lot more going on here than the majority of people consciously grasp, meaning there's a bigger picture that's going on. I feel like I grasp on a good day 5 or 10% of it and make no claims to see more than that. But I have seen what I've seen, and it has changed my perspectives on everything, on how I see life and what we're doing here, and how you respond to things, both pleasant and difficult. I started talking about this stuff because evolutionary astrology is about the soul, and this is an EA channel. And so, in talking about the soul and what is what is my relationship to my soul? In other words, another way to say this is, who am I really? And it's very interesting because we have this thing called soul, which some of the particularly Eastern religions have said for thousands of years, never dies, is eternal and immortal, cannot be stained or corrupted, which basically is how I sense it. We have this part. This is an expression of some consciousness. I think it's what people who talk about God really, really mean, but we don't have to look at it as God. But it's an awareness or a consciousness. And more I see it as a presence that is here right now, all the time. But our conditioning has us anywhere and everywhere, but right here, right now, the vast majority of the time. We're either fretting about the future or worrying about the future or thinking about or healing from or being upset about the past. And none of this is bad or wrong, but we're not really able to find the happiness or, let's say happiness, because I have a different definition of happiness these days, that we're seeking in those places. The gist of it is that our nervous systems, we can call it ego, personality, my sense of me, who I think I am. This guy who was born in New Jersey and did all this stuff, and now he's getting older. And, at some point he's not going to be here. And what's that all about? And all this. This isn't personality or ego identity. And it's not wrong or bad, it's our reference point until, but the issue with it as a reference point is there's more than that, which the majority of humans don't seem to grasp in a really deep way yet. And again, I'm not saying I have this really deep grasp of it, but I definitely see some things. I can own that in humility. And we don't find the happiness and joy and all this that we want in all the running around and striving and looking here and looking there and acquiring this and buying that and moving here and thinking about this, that, and the other thing. They bring temporary satisfaction, but that's which we call happiness or joy. But we do live in a polarity universe. So for every up, there's a corresponding down. There's no way out of this. It's the nature of the reality that we live in. We don't like that. I don't like it. I like to be happy and content and, feeling creative and appreciated and good about myself all the time. But not very many of us do. And the way that we go about trying to do it, we can't really do it that way. For me, what I see what I am learning it comes down to is our egos, our personas, and our physical apparatus, our body, our nervous system. We don't trust life. We don't trust life. We have good reasons not to trust life because we have experienced all kinds of things that have been unpleasant that have occurred from, quote, trusting life. And this has been going on, if your perspective includes reincarnation, then this has been going on for a long time. And if it doesn't, it's been going on for a lot of our current lifetime at the least. And it's a way of seeing things. It's a way of seeing things because from the perspective of the me that I know, stuff goes on like fires, COVID, politics that I don't particularly appreciate, unfair acts of judgment and discrimination and inequality and unfairness all over the place that I don't like at all. And this is just what goes on and on and on. And, most of us do a whole lot of what I call distractive behavior. And again, this is not wrong. It's a phase, it's a stage. But particularly now when people have been, had to stay home a whole lot for months now, not really knowing what to do, filling up the time with TV and Netflix and all sorts of things, which again, there's nothing wrong with them, but at a certain point, they stop feeding the soul, so to speak. And what I mean by that is when things start feeling empty or boring, we're not feeding the deeper parts of ourselves. And it can feel like a hole, and we want to fill a hole up. To me, a whole lot of the Western lifestyle is based around filling up a hole and not feeling the hole, constantly being busy, rushing here, rushing there, doing this, doing that. A lot of the things people do are awesome, kind, giving, sharing, caring. And again, I'm not saying those are wrong, but I'm saying if we're doing them to try to get away from an emptiness or a void that we feel inside when I'm not being active, at certain times, that emptiness or void feeling is going to catch up with us. And we're going to find ourselves unable to have it go away. This correlates, from my perspective, to some degree with what is called depression. And it's like loss of meaning, not doing it for me anymore, and all this. And it's not considered a good thing in our culture. I'm realizing more and more depression, and not only depression, but lesser experiences of just not knowing what to do or feeling unmotivated, etc., are actually part of our growth path. Our human selves, our personality, our egos, what they want in a lot of ways is to feel safe. And what makes most of us feel safe is the feeling secure. This, I think, is one of the core issues with obsessions with money and wealth and accumulation of material stuff and larger houses and more things and so forth. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. And if that is bringing satisfaction to a person and that's what they feel to do, that's what they should do. I'm saying at certain points, there becomes a loss of meaning where what seemed to mean something and brought satisfaction and comfort and a sense of security and well-being simply starts failing to bring those same feelings. What I'm saying with this is, and this, correlates very nicely with astrology, when people are starting to have what we tend to refer to as more difficult transits, which are in general the majority reaction to finding out about more difficult transits that are arising tends to be more like groan than gratitude. I'm not saying they're fun. I'm not saying that in gratitude that I should be happy and grateful of the feeling that my life, my reality as I've known it, my sense of myself appears to be dying or crumbling or falling apart. That's not a comfortable experience for any human. What I'm saying is, it's not bad or wrong. It's not bad karma. It's not something that I can manifest away or will away, because it actually is bringing the next phase or stage of my growth. I look at them increasingly, I look at it as it's actually a sign that I've been doing what I'm intended to be doing. And I've done it well enough that the next phase or next part of the journey is starting to take place, is beginning. And in order for, depending on the extent of the change that's in the program that's coming up, astrologically, you can look at it. If you got some heavy duty outer planet transit going on versus, Mars is retrograde, so that's a few months. But when we're talking about serious transits not that Mars in retrograde isn't a serious transit, but when we're talking about transits that are going to go on for 3, 5, 6 years, and that we know by where they're placed that they're going to kind of turn my life, they're going to change my life in ways that I can't possibly understand how or what's coming. And that goes back, see, then we go to start feeling fear about, oh my God, what may be happening, or anticipation of the change. Those very things are pulling us out of the present moment right now, alluding back to what I was saying a little while ago. So there's no way I can know what's going to happen to me in 5 years, even though I can tell by looking at a chart that a lot of change is very likely. There's no way I can know. And the only frame of reference I have of what that might mean is who I see myself as now and what my past experiences have been. Yet the very intention, point, purpose of the major transits that may be coming along is to take me out of who I have been and who I see myself as, and to show me that I'm even more than that. It's even bigger. I'm even more. And that, in other words, the one constant in this life, in our life, is change. The one constant in our life is change. That's somewhat, to me, not being an expert in it, but somewhat as to me, the essence of Buddhism. That it's just ongoing change. That's what our life is. And what's happened is, because of accumulated traumas, bad experiences, and so forth, so many of us equate change with fear, hesitation, resistance, uh-oh. And that becomes a source of our unhappiness, because we are, life is little by little slowly moving us into something different, something new. And because we have become attached to this is who I am, this is how I see things, it's not seen as exciting, it's seen as scary. Or oftentimes it's seen as both scary and exciting, which I think is a pretty reasonable perspective. Because there are parts of us that yearn for the change, and there's other parts of it that are afraid of it. And it's kind of like those parts need to learn how to talk to each other or speak with each other and get in sync. And this occurs over time. We cannot, with our will, make this kind of change occur. If I try to push myself into the changes coming, to embrace my future, to embrace the transit, and override the parts of me that are resisting it or uncomfortable with it, I am basically repressing valid parts of myself, not honoring them, not giving them their need, their opportunity, their need to speak, to express their fears, like a child that like a child within us that is afraid because it senses an unknown is coming and it feels uncomfortable, and it might go to a trusted parent and talk about this and simply be reassured. Parent can't make the fear go away. The parent can assure the child that it's going to be okay. Things may be different, but they're going to be okay. Locally here, all of the places that burned down, many of them, if not most of them, are going to get rebuilt over time. but a lot of trauma in the meantime, and a sudden loss of reality. I mean, that's an amped up case, but that's a good example of what happens to us if we're having a Pluto, Uranus transit, so forth. It's not burning our house down in a day, but it's changing our house, who we see ourselves as, very deeply over a period of time. And initial reactions for people not used to that kind of change are often fear and resistance. And I find over time the experience of seeing deep change, even if it's not what I wanted, that some years later, it actually turns out that it was a good thing. I had Pluto go over my ascendant about 25 years ago now. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. And, I wound up like 7 years later, 8 years later, I'm suddenly a Pluto astrologer. That was very interesting. I felt awful at the time. At times, I felt awful at the times. I did not know if I was going to be able to make it through. And I had the experience about 5 years later, one day, of saying, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I'm actually grateful for all that I went through because of who I have become out of this. That was not something I would ever have considered I was ever going to say, because it was not fun. When you've been through this stuff a time, the major stuff, a time or two or three, some people it starts for them early on in life. When you've been through this a few times, you realize you can survive, and you do wind up in the long run in a better place, even though you miss parts of what came before, and that's for sure. And all of this is fine. To me, it's the process and the way it unfolds. Our culture has not taught very many people how to look at life this way, or this is why things are happening. We tend to think we're here for our own amusement, and particularly in this culture, that I'm free and I can do what I want and accumulate what I want, and so be it. And then it subconsciously becomes a bit of a sense of entitlement. And sometimes, because I look at things from the spiritual perspective, that we are all emanations of one intelligent, loving, creative source in different costumes, guises, that we really, really, in the core level, are all on the same team, even those that we can't really, just don't jive with their perspectives, class for their personalities, and so forth. I'm not saying that the goal is to be living that out in all its glory, in the present lifetime. I think that's a very, very long journey, and that is part of why we have many of these lifetimes, because it's step by step by step, or a really, really long period of time, because the universe is vast, and if we are all one or emanations, I am actually that whole universe. I'm in enough trouble with one planet, one galaxy, one solar system. Like, oh my gosh. So if I look at it, when I look at it, or as I learn to look at it, as everything that happens, desired or undesired, pleasant and pleasurable, or just incredibly painful and nearly unbearable at times, is actually occurring to help me unfold. Now, you can accept that, that's a longer way of saying everything is here to help me. That's a wonderful thought. It's a mental thought. I say the experiences we're having in our life are helping that mental thought or state ground so that it becomes not just a thought, but it becomes part of our emotional nature. It becomes integrated into our body. It soothes our nervous system to calm accumulated traumas and so forth, because I realize I may not understand how something is helping me in the short term. I may not understand that. And I would go so far as to say, I don't think I'm intended to understand it in the short term. So just the very thought, this is somehow here helping me, is going to trigger my memories, my traumas, my past, my experiences when it sure as goodness did not seem like comfortable, very difficult and painful things were helping me. It was like I want to get as far away from them as fast as I could. And all of that comes up. But the difference is the perspective of the ego, because it is living in a sense of being separate from everything, is kind of like life or the universe in some deep ways is hostile. And I have to take care of myself, because if I don't, I may be dead. And the other perspective, which has to be experienced, is the universe is not hostile, it's benign, and what it's bringing is actually for my good and my benefit, but I'm not going to like some of it. That's a given. And I don't have to like it. I can find a place where I feel grateful for something that I really don't like because I got something from it, a learning from it, but I don't want to go through that again. I can honor it and I can begin to release it. It's made me deeper. It's made me wiser. It's made me more caring. That's what's important. It's not like, if I'm physically in a great deal of pain, then I'm supposed to be thankful that I'm in all this pain. That's, to me, that's unrealistic. I can learn to endure the pain. I can learn, some part of me can have a knowing that this is somehow helping me without really understanding why. And I can be lying there wishing that it was over, like, 3 hours ago. And that's okay. The gist of all of this, I increasingly am learning, is that each one of us is okay as we are. It's okay that I'm angry. It's okay when I'm in grief. It's okay when I'm sad. It's obviously okay when I'm happy and feeling good, but it's okay. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what is going on now, because I don't know exactly what's going on energetically, but the number of people that seem to be unable to hold their center seems to me to be beyond what I've seen in my life. And I'm talking the entire spectrum here. I meant to give a disclaimer at the beginning of this, and I forgot, so I'll give it here. I am not a conspiracy theorist. I am not a QAnon believer. I am not a left-wing conspiracy theory believer or a right-wing conspiracy theory believer. I am not happy that our president is our president, and I in no way see him as one who is saving or breaking open the structure. So if what I just said does not jive with your views about things, I'm okay if you just turn this off. If you do want to hear what I have to say, I appreciate that. I've realized right now it's next to impossible to have discussions between the different viewpoints that have arisen or are front and center now because of the extremes of polarity that we are in. And I'm not really, I have been a person that wanted to convince or persuade other people a lot in my life, and I'm kind of swearing it off because I just see the majority of people don't want to be convinced or converted or persuaded right now. They're pretty sure about their views, and that's okay with me. I'm just getting clearer on mine and trying to remember that somewhere inside of the most wounded, hurt, angry person, whether their persuasions are what we call right wing or left wing, there is a very, very wounded soul. Do I think all those wounds are going to be able to heal if they only made certain changes in this lifetime? I don't really subscribe to that. I think the extremes are signs of a time when a whole lot is in the process of changing. I personally feel that the energies on this planet, from the spiritual perspective, are rapidly rising, and that it is driving many of us a little bit or a lot out of balance. I'm watching many, I've been seeing articles about it. QAnon, I don't even want to talk about that. I'm seeing people in the spiritual and health and wellness communities, not a lot, but more than a few, essentially having somehow come around inside themselves to basically having beliefs that are very similar to the deepest Trump supporters. They've kind of gotten to a similar place from taking the opposite road around the mountain, and it's kind of shocking to me. I'll say about all of it, my feeling is that what I've been speaking about, there is so much change in the air that on some level people feel. And the change equals insecurity. And somebody must be doing it to me because all this change, why can't it be the way it has been? And to me, there's a very simple answer to that, because life is moving on. And we're very uncomfortable with it because I don't feel like we're just going around in a circle change. I feel like it's going up in a spiral. That awareness and the level of awareness and consciousness is shifting, and that the perspectives that we accept as reality and real and normal they're not going to hold it anymore. And this scares people because in order to embrace the new that's coming in, you kind of have to go through some kind of inner meltdown. It's a death rebirth experience. It's a dark night of the soul. In the United States, I've talked on here and many others have too, we're in our Pluto return. And this is occurring in Capricorn. And what I say is the structure, Capricorn, of this country is going to change. I have no predictions as to what that's going to look like. I certainly never dreamed that a virus was going to play a role in that. It never even crossed my mind. And yet, to me, it clearly is. Our structure is going to change. To what? I don't know. Structure changes on a mass scale feel very insecure to very many people, and they try to hold on to things. Somebody is making this happen. There are large numbers of people on the West Coast that believe that all these fires have been set. That all of them, they've all been set. It's a conspiracy plot. If you're on the right, it's Antifa. If you're on the left, I don't know who it is, but and there have been people setting fires, and I've seen some pictures that have been arrested, and I've seen some pictures of them, and they are very whacked out human beings as observed on their face. They're unbalanced. So far, there's no proof of an organized plan that this is what occurred. It just happened to occur on one of the windiest days in the history of Oregon. That's a natural event. And so far, I don't think anybody can pay somebody else to make the wind blow 50 miles an hour over thousands of square miles. And yet, knowing that there's somebody doing this stuff to me or to us in some way makes the ego or the personality feel some sense of security, because it's not just random. It's like, and when those people get caught, then they're going to get punished, and subconsciously, then maybe things will go back to normal. My feeling is anything that we call the normal in the United States, and I think there's reasonably in much of the world, is gone. It's not getting back to normal. There's a new normal is forming, because we're using up the world from the old normal, and that's okay. I have a lot of anger about this, whether it's the rich people or the environmentalists or the corporations or the deep state or this or that, they're responsible. But it just is the way it is, and life is changing it. And all of this topsy-turvy and turmoil and people trying to grapple with, grasp, integrate what is going on is all part that out of that, the next reality or sense of normal or natural is gradually going to come out of it. And there are always people that feel they want to participate in bringing in the new, and a whole lot of them have very good intentions, kindness, caring, sharing, and so forth. And there's always people that this scares the hell out of, that because they're going to lose what they have. They fear they're going to lose what they have. And so they're just in resistance to it. tobacco companies, old example, didn't want to admit what was going on because they didn't want to give up their power. Oil companies don't want to admit what's going on because they don't want to give up their power because they're afraid of what might happen. But the point of it is we don't know what might happen. You know, this just happened in the fires. The fire comes in a neighborhood. One or two buildings are perfectly fine. Right next to them, a whole field is just flattened. And next to that is another place or two or three where nothing has gone on. I mean, it's incredible. And what I've read is this is kind of normal in fires. We don't know what's going to happen. The future is unknown, and that's the very thing that scares people the most. The future is unknown. We can't predict it. Our sense of security is based on safety and certainty. And there are delusions. There is no certainty, and there is not really consistency other than things are going to change. So the point of becoming more comfortable with feeling challenged, because it is change that causes us to feel challenged most of the time, is to learn or to realize that change is inevitable, and that I may have to go through some uncomfortable or unpleasant things in change, but I'm going to, 99% of the time, I'm going to survive it, and new things are going to start. And this can be on any scale, you know, from changing a job, ending a relationship, moving to the next town, or moving to the other side of the world. I mean, the larger the change, the more one emotionally goes through adapting to it. Oftentimes, like fires and storms and whatnot, the motivator of the change appears to be external. But my perspective and the spiritual perspective is nothing can happen to anybody that's not part of their unfolding path, pleasant or unpleasant. That's why I feel it's important over time to really integrate, to breathe in, to grasp it, that life is really on my side, that whether I lose everything I have or I gain more than I ever imagined I would, or anywhere in between relating to change, I'm going to survive. I may not like the change. That's a given, and that's okay. It's okay to feel that way. It may take a long time to integrate and adapt, and I may be dealing with grief from what came before that I need to let go of, that I didn't really want, or I'm not ready to let go of. But you know, life didn't ask me. If my house did not burn down, if my house burned down, I didn't ask for that. I wasn't. Nobody was praying, "Oh Lord, burn my house down." It happens. But the change in the way we see things is, oh, I can grieve and I can feel all that I do, but this is clearly a new beginning. It's clearly a new beginning. Am I going to be jumping up and down with gratitude on day 2? No way. Nor if I did, that would really be fake, what's called bypass, because the natural emotions of death, rebirth, grief, perhaps depression for some period of time. And it's like the seasonal change of going through a harsh winter, and then gradually spring comes, and then summer comes, and then fall comes, and then it's winter again. And these cycles, that's astrology, right? These cycles are how our life is constructed and what we're doing here. In fact, I will say, interesting, it came to me at the end. I dare say you can make a case, and I've heard it said, we actually come here. We actually come here to be challenged. Being on the other side, things are non-physical, things are smoother. Yeah, one of the major reasons we actually pop in and go through all this is because out of the challenges we grow. True or false, most of the time we grow more through things that are uncomfortable or unpleasant than we do through things that are pleasant. I would say that's true for me the majority of the time, and I'm pretty sure most people would agree with that. It's something we don't necessarily want to agree with because we wish it could be some way other than that, but it is that way. And so, the summation of what I'm talking about is we're moving into a very intense period. The next few months, particularly in the United States, are going to be, I feel, very extreme. And I don't know what's going to happen after. They could be extreme for some number of months afterwards because things are being predicted and threatened that have never happened before in the history of the country. This is not only in this country, it is strong here because we're having a Pluto return, but this is going on around the planet. And so my summation is one of the grandest things that I can do at this point in time is take the extremes and the craziness I feel at times and use it as a practice session to see how I can center myself, how I can bring myself back to the present moment. I went through this in my Pluto return many years ago, and when I was freaking out about the future. And I learned to say to myself, Steve, what is wrong right now? What's wrong right now? And I found out 98% of the time right now, nothing was wrong. I dare say, I haven't had the experience and I don't wish to, push it on people, but even if your house was burning down or had just burnt down, there is a place where it's possible to go in this present moment right here. Okay, my life just drastically changed. And I'm freaking out because I have no idea what's going to happen. And I'm angry and I'm grieving. But right now, what's wrong? Right now, I'm doing what's here to do, which is to look at what's going on. And tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day, the path forward out of this very intense situation, step by step, will present itself. And some of it is not going to be what I wish would happen, but it's what's presenting itself. Now that's an extreme case, and I'm using it as a metaphor, because when I'm in the middle of personal change, perhaps it's emotional change. It's not as extreme as a house burning down, but I'm upset about something or other. I can pull myself back to right now, because life is going to work out what's going on. What's going to happen is going to happen. Whether I'm worried about it or not, it's still going to happen. And so in that field, to use it as an opportunity to breathe. It's a good way to remember just getting back to the breath. And that right now, despite how bad I may feel, there's not, that's all that's wrong or what's going on right now. In this moment, there's nothing I can do about it. So I can just be with this moment right now and knowing that my future is not going to be the same as right now, but I don't know what it's going to be like. So one moment at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, the next phase of my life is going to unfold. And the happiness or contentment or comfortableness is not that I necessarily like it all, but it's that I learn a way to feel better about myself while I'm in this process that is actually helping me to grow in ways I don't yet see. I'm going to stop there. I hope this has been helpful to people who are experiencing a lot of change and perhaps uncomfortableness in their life. Thank you very much for listening. And for now, that is all.